Good morning. Very happy to be here on this fine winter morning. You know, when it comes to the weather, that expression, you can run but you can't hide, is absolutely true. Each year I tell the Speakers Committee that I'll take any Sundays between April and November. And I do that to avoid the snow. Because I figure, well, it doesn't snow in November. And so I looked down around Thursday afternoon and I said, oh man, I hope this is a one-day event. And it was a one-day event, and so here we are. Well, my topic this morning is Thanksgiving, a day or an attitude. Start out with a story. One day, a young man named John received a parrot as a gift. And the parrot had a bad attitude and even worse, a vocabulary. Every word out of the bird's mouth was rude, obnoxious, and laced with profanity. John tried to change the bird's attitude by saying only polite words, playing soft music, and anything else he could think of to clean up its vocabulary. So finally, he got fed up and yelled at the parrot, and the parrot yelled back. He shook the parrot, and it just got angrier and ruder. In desperation, he grabbed the bird and put it in the freezer. Well, for a few minutes, it squawked and kicked and screamed, and then suddenly there was total quiet. Well, afraid that he'd hurt the bird, John quickly opened the freezer door, and the parrot calmly stepped out onto his outstretched arm and said, I believe I may have offended you with my rude language and actions. I'm sincerely remorseful for my inappropriate transgressions, and I fully intend to do everything I can to correct my rude and unforgivable behavior. Well, John was stunned by the change in the bird's attitude, and as he was about to ask the parrot what had made such a dramatic change, the bird spoke up very softly and said, may I ask what the turkey did? I can hardly wait for Thanksgiving each year to tell that story. And one year I forgot to include it, so I told it for Christmas because plenty of people are still eating turkey for Christmas. But now I put it in my calendar a week before. Use bad parrot story. Well, Thanksgiving is almost here, Thursday, and it has a long history as an American holiday. And the story begins in 1621, when after a hard first year in the New World, the Pilgrims' fall harvest was very successful, and they found they had enough food to put away for the winter. They built homes in the wilderness, had raised enough crops to keep them alive during the coming winter, and were at peace with their Indian neighbors. Governor William Bradford proclaimed a day of Thanksgiving that was to be shared by all the colonists and the neighboring Native American Indians. The custom of an annually celebrated Thanksgiving held after the harvest continued through the years. During the American Revolution, a day of national Thanksgiving was suggested by the Continental Congress. And in 1863, President Abraham Lincoln appointed a national day of Thanksgiving. And since then, each president has issued a Thanksgiving Day proclamation, usually designating the fourth Thursday of each November as the holiday. Now, this kind of celebration really isn't new. Harvest festivals and Thanksgiving celebrations were held throughout the ancient world. Now, many ancient farmers believed that their crops contained spirits which cause the crops to grow and die. They believed that these spirits would be released when the crops were harvested and had to be destroyed, or they would take revenge on the farmers who harvested them. And some of the harvest festivals celebrated the defeat of these spirits. So you can think about that when you go into your backyard and pick the vegetables that you've been growing all summer. And so throughout history, people have celebrated the harvest with Thanksgiving ceremonies. Now on Thursday, we'll celebrate Thanksgiving, which all too often is simply a one-day holiday devoted to how much food a person can eat. But then what happens the next day? Well, Christmas is just around the corner. And so thanks goes out the window, and it's time to start thinking about presents. The sidewalk Santas take to the streets, and Christmas music starts to play everywhere all of the time. In fact, that started already. They could barely get the Halloween stuff off the shelves when the Christmas music started. Now, given all of this, we should ask, is Thanksgiving only a day, or is it an attitude toward life? Now, we have a day set aside for giving thanks, but Thanksgiving is also a state of consciousness that we should carry with us all the time. And to this end, we might think of the things for which we are grateful, and these could be relationships with people, things we have, situations in which we are involved. Now, there's much to be grateful and for which to be grateful and give thanks, especially for those of us in the New Thought movement. Because first and foremost, we can be thankful that we know what God really is, that we know what God really is, that we know God is infinite mind, infinite principle, infinite knowingness, infinite givingness. It's something we don't have to placate or plead with. It's something that we can never be separated from, because it is always where we are, what we are. And we can be thankful that we don't have to go to any special place or do any special things to contact this power, because since we already are it, we simply need to know it. I'm always a little reluctant to say that, because I realize that I'm taking away the main reason some people come to church on Sunday. So it might be a self-defeating thing to say, but it's absolutely true. Now, we can be thankful that we're in a teaching that allows everyone to discover for themselves what they really believe. We're free to believe what we want to believe about the nature of life, and then release everyone else on their individual pathway to believe whatever he or she wants to believe. Because after all, you can't force a spiritual idea on anyone. You can't. You can only offer it to them. And so in New Thought, we don't say you have to believe in this, you have to believe in that, you have to believe in the other thing. What we say is, this is the way we think about things. It's here for you to accept or not accept. And so we're all free to be ourselves. And now we can be thankful. We're free to believe whatever we want to believe, whether or not it's in a book, whether or not it's in the creed of a group. And so therefore we can give thanks for freedom of spiritual belief. Now, we can be thankful that there's a creative consciousness that creates out of itself and becomes that which it creates. This one consciousness, mind, that we also call God, is the consciousness of everyone in the world, whether they know about it or not. And what we call the law of mind applies to everyone, whether they know about it or not. And this is as true of the law of mind as it is of any physical law. For example, little children don't know about the law of gravity, but they're subject to it. Later, when they go to school, they're taught about the law of gravity, and they're still subject to it. And when they're 95, they'll still be subject to the law of gravity, even if they haven't thought about it in years. And we could also be thankful that our subconscious mind acts as a law of cause and effect. And what we deeply accept into the subconscious, we then experience in the world. When we declare spiritual statements into our subconscious mind, it is its nature to accept and to act upon them. See, there's a power that says, why not have the good? Why not have the good? Because all of the good that there is available to every individual. But it requires mental acceptance. We must first accept it as being possible, and then accept it as being a reality, because first it's a reality in thought, and then it's a reality in our experience. We also need to remember there's no power opposed to our use of consciousness except our own self-imposed limitations. And these are all of the times we say, I can't, I shouldn't, and all of those other things that we sometimes tell ourselves. Now, gratitude and thanksgiving directs our attention to the good things in our life, to the positive things. And where our attention goes, our mind goes, and then we go. One of the most important things to remember, where our attention goes, our mind follows, and where our mind goes, that's going to create our experience. Now, this is how gratitude and thanksgiving produce the great good that they do. We always hear gratitude and thanksgiving produce those kinds of great good, but how do they do it? Well, this is the way that they do it. They draw our attention to the good and positive things in our lives and then create more of them. In fact, now there's even a science of gratitude. Well, I guess there's a science of everything else. Why shouldn't there be a science of gratitude also? In a book called Thank You Power, Deborah Norville examines the ways we can be grateful in our lives, in effect carrying this consciousness of thanksgiving with us all of the time. Introducing this idea, she presents the results of research that's been done about grateful people. They actually studied grateful people to find out more about them, what they did, what their experiences were. And here are some of the conclusions about test subjects who were consciously grateful. They felt better about their lives as a whole. They were more optimistic. They were more energetic. They were more enthusiastic. They were more determined. They were more interested, more joyful. They felt stronger about handling challenges. They exercised more. They had fewer illnesses. They got more sleep. They made progress toward important personal goals. They were more likely to have helped someone else. They were perceived by others as more generous and helpful. They were less envious of those with more possessions. They were less cluttered. That's quite a list. But the thing is, this is exactly what we would expect to find as the result of as the result of a consciousness that's been focused on the good. And focusing on the good is exactly what a consciousness of gratitude will accomplish. And so all of these things come about as the result of that. Now, we can be grateful for all of these things that I've talked about, and one important additional one. And that is, because we are spiritual creations of an infinite mind, there is a pure idea at the center of each of us that remains untouched by whatever we've done or are doing with life. And this is something we can sense. And once we've sensed it, we can then live it, expand it, and then experience it in some greater way. And so ends the lesson.